Do you want to be a champion, as in an artisan of your craft, whether it be teaching, preaching, or even basket weaving? One thing that I've found as I've done my research on what makes someone great at what they do is that there's so many different answers, it's almost hard to find one way that it's true. You know, I've asked people who have been teachers for 30 years, what do you think is the underlying principle that makes someone great at what they do, whether they're martial artists or a scientist? And they couldn't give me an answer. They said it's usually you being your best self. But I felt there had to be a correlation, something that underlyingly tied everybody together to this level of greatness, because oftentimes when you look at celebrities or athletes at the highest level, they tend to have a very deep admiration for each other and crafts that aren't connected to what they do specifically. So as I had gone through my work of self-improvement and read books like The War of Art, and this underlying idea of the professional emerged, and I realized that there was an underpinning correlation between someone who worked at something and became great at that same thing. And what I realized is that champions think in decades. There is a timeline of longevity in their craft, whether it be by thought or by action. It's the same thing. And I think that whenever you come to this conclusion, whether it be the moment that you start a craft or something that builds in you over time, there is a mindset shift towards building, creating, or training that emerges once you've fallen into the well that is whatever you want to build. Some people consider it falling in love. Some of it hits them like a sledgehammer of realizing that if you want to see whatever you're working on be expressed on a higher plane at a high quality of results, you have to be willing to put in the work over time. It's that same adage that the best time to plant a seed of an apple tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And so what I've realized in my experience with self-improvement and working on things over time is that this world, right, is ruled by space and time, right? These are the dimensions that keep us living in this reality, right? As there's different dimensions, the first, the second, the third, we are bound by these conditions, Newtonian principles, if you will. But I found the one way to break that cycle is by playing the rules or the hidden rules of the game that exist in this reality, which is letting time, letting action and space work in your favor rather than trying to fight against it. I think that oftentimes, especially with so much marketing that is catered towards making you feel that you are not whole unless you buy this thing, get rich quick schemes that make you feel that a new beginning can happen overnight, and our own natural human tendencies to want things now, immediately, and it being hard to visualize a reality that isn't existing in this present. And so the idea of waiting and working for something that is longer than what we want feels agonizing to our nature. That's why we're called human beings, not human waitings or human thinkings. We love to experience things in the now. And if it requires us to do things outside of that nature, it can feel like nails on a chalkboard. But I think one thing that has comforted me and concepts that I talk about this channel is the idea of almost taking life one bit at a time and each bit compounding together to grow over a lifetime, like planting seeds. And so what I've realized that by having the day-to-day life that you build, having it be fulfilling on the path to a bigger dream has been so far the best balancing act I could find for the pathway to become a champion in this modern day. The benefit of thinking like a champion, no matter what you're doing, whether it could be something as small or everyday as being the best walker that you can be, just going for walks consistently, or a big project that you feel could really change the world if you just put in the time to build your skill and build your effort and build your practice in it. I find that when you extend the timeline of a dream, failures have a lot less impact on your psyche. And I think that can be one of the biggest things that debilitates us from building something, which is the idea of you not being able to fulfill this legacy you have in your mind and potentially the external feedback that you might get, embarrassment, humiliation, shame at you not conquering this dream that you've either said or maybe you've said internally of you wanting to build. And the idea of not making it and people judging you for that can be so heavy, it makes you not want to pursue it. But I find that when you extend the timeline of your dream, of your skill set, of your plan. It allows the everyday ups and downs and the big failures to feel a lot less impactful on your emotional state, to not identify so readily with your failures that you feel like because you failed, you are a failure. Because this is a side note, but I feel that failure has gotten such a bad rep. The PR team for failure has been doing terrible recently, because failure is really one of the most underrated teachers of a lifetime. And I've had that said to me for years and years and years. So many people talk about it in timeless books and lessons. But I find that until you sort of embody the truth and live it for yourself, cliches don't feel like the timeless truths they are until you live them out for yourself. And that unique perspective that you have because you've experienced it in your own way then adds life to that saying that makes it feel like, oh yeah, this is something to live by, right? In the same way that one person can say to you, hey, you make sure you sleep well on time and eat food, and you're like, okay. But for whatever reason, maybe another teacher or another experience makes you really embody that truth, and you're like, oh, gotta eat well and sleep on time. Sometimes it's just a season for you to hear a certain lesson, and sometimes you have to live life a little bit to really embody and put on this sort of suit of education that then tailors to you throughout your experience living life. And so I find that failure really guides you into understanding all the different ways that something can't work and gives you an underlying foundation in reverse engineering your pathway to success. Because success is fairly linear, right? Oftentimes, especially like I said, human beings, we're in the present, we take it as we come, we want things instantly. If something works, right, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? And so once we find something clicks, we move on. But when something doesn't click and you have to spend time sort of experimenting and thinking and reflecting on why this wasn't a success, you find so many different avenues of understanding that one thing that by the time you do have success, you learn so much more from not getting it than you do. Because it's like two sayings. It's either a lesson or a blessing. But also, when you fail or on the pathway to success, you either get what you want or you learn more of how to get what you want. And so I think that when you think in decades, when you think like a champion, and you have a longer timeline for contemplation and execution, you start to look at these failures as the various roadmaps or the ways that you've gotten lost that then can connect to a bigger understanding for the future of your goal. I think everything is a teacher, whether it's understanding trees or children or a professor that you've loved for a lifetime. Everything can be a teacher for you on the way to your goal. And I think that by being a champion who thinks in decades, right? Because you are a champion the moment that you live and think like one. It just hasn't externalized in your physical reality yet. And so your job as a champion in training is to hold the frequency of whatever you want to create and build that connection to it until it just manifests in your reality. Some people do it by pure manifestation. Some people do it as a mix of pure action. Some people have a balance of both. But I think that whatever it is, this world, like I said, is bound by time and space. And so by holding the frequency of what you want over a timeline, it has to come to pass. Because everything is made of energy, and your thoughts are energy too. And your actions are also electric. Let me make sure I get this right. Your emotions are magnetic. Your thoughts are electric, I believe. I might have mixed them up, but it makes electromagnetic. You know what? I'll leave this because I need to do my research. And whenever there's a lexical gap where I'm not understanding something, it's important for me to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence, because I want this channel to be a repository for information, experience, and sensation, emotion, vibes. So if I'm not understanding something, I want to research it before I get back. So I'll come back to that. But basically, in order to create something, it has to be a mix of your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, right? And so when you think in decades, you have to be able to master your emotional management, your time management, your energy management, and your space management in terms of what you're building, right? And so by being a champion in training who thinks in decades, you then have to, honestly, I think you're most like your most champion self in the beginning of your journey, because you have the least feedback possible, letting you know that you're on the right path. And so it actually becomes easier over time by thinking in this mindset, because time works in your favor, it compounds. And so by embodying this championship mindset today and just executing over a lifetime, you learn more about how to get what you want, and it allows you to then create on a higher plane. And so the final point of why I believe champions think in decades. And in order to have a champion mindset, I believe that you need to have long-term patience and long-term diligence over a lifetime. Is because thinking this way carves you so that every day you are benefiting from this mindset, even if you don't have what you want in your skill, in your end goal, or in your dream. Because your actions are on an everyday basis are very similar to water grooving a rock. At first, when you look at rivers and as they flow through different pebbles and rocks and sediment, it looks like nothing's really changing, right? You just see constant motion and the life energy of water as it goes through the banks, as it weaves through. But over months, years, decades, you notice that that rock has been grooved down by the constant momentum and motion of that gentle water. And so water in the short term adapts very quickly to its environment. It does not really change much. But over a lifetime, you can carve out mountains, you can carve out new pathways, and the stone that seems so impenetrable has now been hollowed by this gentle relentlessness of the water as it moves through it. And so I think that, was it Bruce Lee that said, be like water? And I think that was more of the day-to-day mindset of being able to adapt to your circumstances, which I do think is important as well in long-term thinking, right? But I think it's no different. I think water, in a long-term sense, it's almost like a scout. It has to be nimble to its environment, dodge and move through the forest, being able to hide and blend in, but it has a destination. It's trying to get a certain type of result. It's trying to go forward and be the eyes of the future for that goal, to give your past self, your current self, and even your present self, right? Or even your future self, information and understanding of where you want to go. And so I think that you have to be similar to that water, similar to that scout. And it allows you to then create things over a lifetime that only take a little bit of gentle movement every day to change. Because the moment that you make an action, the moment that you change your mind, the moment that you change your energy towards something, you have already changed your life. But it's just allowing the compound effect of time to work in your favor to really see it executed and manifest in the exact dream or vision that you have in your mind. So I don't want to ramble too long. I will probably end up redoing this video as I do with all the videos over each level of this YouTube journey, so that it's more succinct, it's more interactive, and more entertaining. But I do believe that the underlying principle of champions is the fact that they either think or create or move over decades and let time and their actions work in their favor, so that their dreams are a lagging effect of who they are. And you can become a champion within one thought, within one action, within one motion. It's just holding the frequency of your energy, your time, and your emotional state, being able to then birth and bring forth this vision onto the physical plane. So yeah, hope you have a great day. Peace.